All right, welcome into the Noll Road in 2025. Training camp starts this week. The Steelers going all in for a Super Bowl in 2025. Aaron Rodgers in the fold, but does he still have it? We'll have the latest insider reports on that. We have our over-under season win totals, and I think sportsbooks are really messing up on the Steelers number. Plus, new player rankings are out. TJ Watt snubbed, but another Steeler elevated. Let's do this.
To the corner of the end zone. Oh, for a touchdown!
Yeah, buddy, I'm Gavin Dawson, 25-year sports radio veteran, and with me, as always, is the former all-academic lineman from Kentucky, New Bear Lesniewski. Buddy, how the heck are you?
Awesome. Summer season about to turn up for football. This is the best time of year. Jim Harbaugh called it better than Christmas.
Ooh, I would agree, man. This is absolutely fantastic with anticipation around every corner. Let's dig into it. NFL coaches do believe Aaron Rodgers still has it. This is according to Albert Breer, who went on the Ryan Russillo podcast, and the phrase that pays is right here. Talking to other teams who were evaluating him, they looked at him at the end of the year, the games against the Dolphins, the game against the Jags in particular. They're saying he still has a lot of it. There's not a huge decline in skill here. So that's exactly what this season and this chance comes down to. How much of Aaron Rodgers' MVP form of just 3 or 4 years ago can he capture here in Pittsburgh, New Bear?
Yeah, and even more than that is that they don't need him to. They're not asking him to come in and be MVP Aaron Rodgers. They're asking him to be better than what they've had to give them a chance. You know, he's got a ton left in the tank. If he's healthy, and let's be honest, I mean, the Achilles is probably the longest run to come back from of any major injury. I mean, short of a rotator cuff or a catastrophic shoulder thing for a quarterback, Tommy John for a pitcher. But even those have been radically improved over the years. And you see guys coming back from ACLs in 6 to 9 months. This thing with the Achilles was further exacerbated with Rodgers because he literally had a documentary crew following him around where he was talking about trying to come back within the same season. And for all intents and purposes was right there if you listen to him in doing so. And so, I mean, last year, first half of the year, was he even really healthy versus the second half of the year when he starts and he gets his best friend, Devontae Adams, to throw FU balls to. So, it's interesting to look at his last year in Green Bay. We were robbed truly after the American flag planting and then his Achilles going right away in New York. If you look at his last year in Green Bay and last year with New York, the numbers are almost identical. It's pretty cool to think about. Green Bay was saying, "Hey, we're done," and then he doesn't have the momentum, the chance really to find a momentum-based start in New York, and he's really been uphill battle since then. And he's got a fresh, clean slate. He's got playmakers, and more importantly, they're not going to be asking him to chuck the rock 40 times a game.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. If you can get Aaron Rodgers in a situation where you don't have to rely on him to be Superman, which at one point he was. I mean, brother, there was like a 5-year period after the Super Bowl run where I really felt like with Aaron Rodgers, because of the cannon, because of the smarts, the pre-snap, the post-snap, and his ability to move. I compared him to Chris Paul, the great point guard of the NBA, just in his quick feet, the ability of those hips to change direction and escape pressure. And, we saw him, do it on huge levels in playoff games in 2014 and 2016, sometimes while nursing a significant lower body injury. So, that's what I think of when it comes to Aaron Rodgers at this point. He has not always needed to be 100% athlete. Now, in fairness, watching the Jets, I do feel like last year there was some strength and power issues when it comes to that change of direction and pocket mobility because of the Achilles, and I can relate to that because I went through a very significant left foot rebuild, right? And I know that my injury, while being a little bit worse than Rodgers, once you disrupt the ankle, it never comes back the way that it is. And I always pay attention when athletes are going through a situation like this. So I am curious, is it going to be better than what we saw last year with the Jets? That was enough, I think, to drive the Steelers deep on a playoff run. But if he can get like 10% of athleticism back compared to last year, then I think he could still be absolutely a difference-making player on the other side of 40.
The thing that's really interesting to look back at his career, because remember, there was the delayed start sitting behind Favre. And when you talk about him getting up and running, it was bumpy from the jump. I mean, he was 6-10 in his first year as a starter, and that was 4 years into his career. When you look at it, though, over time, it's a lot like the Tom versus time, the Brady stuff that he did with Facebook a few years back. Aaron Rodgers' MVPs came 10 years apart, and his last one came in his age 38 season, which was the year before Green Bay was like, we're good. We're going to move on here. You know, there's some guys who just have it, and he arguably is the greatest thrower of the football in NFL history. When you take all the things into consideration, not just arm strength, but the layering ability, the touch, the context with which he can put any ball anywhere at any time. He's hit the Hail Marys. He's hit the half Mary he hit against the Cowboys to put Dak out of his misery all those years ago is one of the greatest throws in NFL history. The one in our intro, Ben Roethlisberger to Antonio Holmes, is the greatest throw in NFL history. The Aaron Rodgers one to Jared Cook to seal that was wild card, or was it divisional? To send Dallas home. I mean, that was like Mahomes level putting Josh Allen out. I mean, he's that dude, and he's. Yeah. The arm is still there. The arm talent is still there. The pocket mobility for him, because we're not asking him to run around, and we're not even really asking him to run around and go pick up a first down on 3rd and 7 unless Super Bowl's on the line, like old Elway, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pocket mobility was the thing that really made him so special, because he had that ability to, like Dan Marino, just quick twitch out and to do that on the move. And to not have that as part of his game, and then to have the memes and remember the reverse that went so bad where they traded for Devontae Adams to basically end up as, you know, the highest rated or most watched meme or TikTok video of the year that ended up with everyone just kind of getting their bell rung. They're not, the Steelers aren't like that. They're not going to be running around, you know, asking for reverse tricks. They want to play smash mouth, and then they need him to just be able to hit 1 or 2 over the top.
I think the Jets is a difficult situation to evaluate anybody in, just because of how dysfunctional that was. And I think this will be the best version of Rodgers that we've seen post Green Bay. He's pretty dang good last year. You want to try looking at this hype video that his people put out? What do we got here?
I love this because they're playing spike ball. Have you played spike ball? That's one of the funnest, whether you're in the backyard, you know, around a bonfire, or you're at the beach. It's one of the funnest party games there is. It's better than cornhole for sure.
So I'm not quite sure how to even share this or make it big enough that we can see well on full screen. I guess I'll do that.
You got it.
Okay. So he's running up the steps of the beach. Oh, they're going to play some spike ball. Is this demonstrating how good he's moving around?
Well, the big thing that popped off a few weeks ago were how jacked his calves were. And when you talk about, I mean, I've had injuries to both of my Achilles, not obviously full tears and having to go through the grueling rehab, you know, that he went through and was much documented. But to see him looking as physically strong as he does, and we're all out there in shorts, and you know, it's not a real deal yet. He's got to face pressure. He's got to step through the pocket without something popping on him. But to see him out here with just, I mean, a who's who of some of these guys that train together and doing stuff like this, which, I mean, you know, the first thing the orthodox do is they don't let you go uphill or downhill. So to see him being able to train like this gives you every indication that he's as right as he's been in a long time.
Yeah, I love it. And you're right, man. Those calves are massive. Those are like church bells. Dang. And no doubt he's done an incredible amount of physical therapy to get to that point. But from what we saw from the Enigma documentary, that doesn't surprise me. Like, this is one of the guys that is one of the absolute hardest workers in the NFL. And I just, you know, I'm not surprised that Aaron Rodgers does everything in his power to, you know, to be that level of athlete so close removed from a significant surgery like that. But I guess I wasn't aware that he had that in him until I saw that documentary, that he's up there with like the Tom Brady's and Peyton Manning's as far as being maniacal every day, trying to stack, you know, quality moments into, you know, being your best on game day.
The coolest thing about all this is he doesn't need it. He doesn't. He walks out tomorrow. If he just decides I'm done, he's got a ton of money in the bank. He's got a ring. He's a first ballot. He's a unanimous gold jacket guy. He doesn't need this. He had to want this. He had to want Pittsburgh. He had to want Tomlin. He had to want the chase for number 7 because he's newly married. He's got all this stuff that he's doing on the side where he's having a ton of fun, similar to a guy like Kobe Bryant, not just with the Achilles, but with the media and with the post-football career that's going to do, I mean, more than most even dream about. He's going to have this whole second life in production and in the movies or whatever it is that he wants to do because he's interested and he's interesting. And I think we're all lucky that we're going to have a front row seat.
Yeah. Next branch on this topic tree. I consider myself lucky right now to be paying so much attention to what this Steelers team is capable of. What is the downside? Let me put it at like 80%. I think Aaron Rodgers and this offense are going to be great. I can't wait to see Arthur Smith get his flowers back after being drugged by the NFL.
3 monster tight ends. I mean, they're
Right?
going to run more 13 personnel than anyone, and not just to do it. They're going to have big explosives out of it.
But what about the downside? Here's James Harrison as the headline on Newsweek. Steelers legend reveals brutal prediction for Aaron Rodgers' NFL conclusion. And, you're talking James Harrison here. And I guess this is just a worst case scenario prediction. And he says if the Steelers start losing and looking like they're not going to make it above 500, I think it gets real ugly to the point where they may, let's let this dude go midseason for Aaron. Let's just get him out of here and put one of these other quarterbacks in because Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere.
Right.
And I think, last season, what was it? 63%, 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 picks. Like a massive fall off would be shocking, but it could happen at this age, right? Like it would be what happened to Tom Brady in his finale, or what might be in the process of happening with LeBron James. Like our icons, our guys that, looked at like at one point they could keep playing until they were 50. At some point there's a wall.
Let's not forget that Brady's last year, he led the league in completions, in attempts. He was 67%, 4,700 yards, 25 tutties, and Mike Evans dropped about 5 of them. His numbers look completely different if Mike Evans just doesn't, if he could catch a cold. The thing that's really interesting to think about what James Harrison said in his own right. You want to talk about guys who have Hall of Fame cases that aren't in, that'll probably one day get in by the Veterans Committee, and hopefully it doesn't take that long. When I saw this quote, I mean, it's like an hour-long plus podcast. Him and Hushmanzada are just kind of they're talking about a lot of stuff, and it's an all over the place rambling conversation. And they got great guests, and they're a lot of fun, and it's a pretty chill vibe. It wasn't like James Harrison is like screaming at the TV that the sky is falling, right? But at the same time, when I read this quote, I thought the headline actually, where it says conclusion, said concussion, and Harrison might have CTE. I mean, this is one of the more ridiculous quotes of the offseason. This is like Colin Cowherd level engagement farming.
You gotta assume a lot of things, like they're losing. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be there. That's an awful interesting cliff to jump off.
So having said all of that, if it did happen, if he got hurt and was just like, I'm in a limo, I'm on a PJ, I'm in Aruba, I'm going to go do the next Netflix series. The one silver lining is that you get to find out what Will Howard's got. And you get to find out if you already have the next great Steelers quarterback in-house before you start talking about next year or the 2027 draft class, depending on what guys like Sellers and Manning and Lagway do when they decide to come out. It's kind of interesting to think about because there's a lot of Big Ben 2.0 type whispers, and Ben's mentoring the kid. And when you look up the quarterback depth chart or right across the locker room and you see Aaron Rodgers wrapping his arm around this kid, unlike what was done for him on his way in or what he did for Jordan Love on the way, I just think this dude's in a different place. And for him to make the decision to do it at all, for him to be here at all means that he's all in. And the fact that he's here means the Steelers are all in.
I can't wait to see Will Howard. I mean, just evaluating him as a prospect, I thought this guy's got a lot of stuff to add to his toolkit. But the moxie, the poise that he showed in the semifinal and in the final, making 2 decisive plays, putting the ball in the air, making runs to clinch the victory. I thought, dude, this guy's got the it factor that we're talking about with Aaron Rodgers. It's just a matter of can he add the tools to allow him to have success.
Yeah, when you look at him, 6'5" in cleats, 230. I mean, Roethlisberger's 6'5", 241. He's 6'4", 236. You see, put on the Kansas State film in particular. Ryan Day doesn't love running any of his athletic quarterbacks. But when you put on the K-State film and you see him running the Q run series, I mean, he's making house calls and he's running dudes over. I mean, he's not just. It's not just because of the size or the weight or the speed, the combine, the Olympics, underwear Olympics. It's not just that stuff. Ben Roethlisberger wouldn't be kind of admitting it, even if it's a little bit of a wink, tongue in cheek. He wouldn't be wanting to mentor this kid if he didn't see a bright future for him.
I love that, man. And I can't wait to see him get his shot, but I hope it's in 2026 or maybe 2027 with the Steelers trying to defend a championship and having Aaron Rodgers back in the fold. Up next here on the Noll Road, let's go to win total predictions, over-unders. I mean, how did a team that started this hot last year and has had so much success with much lesser quarterbacks, how are they sitting at 8.5? Here we are on Bet Online. The juice on both sides is -115. Our referral link, by the way, in the description. If you do like the Noll Road, we'd love it if you can sign up on Bet Online through us, and we're giving up to $250 in bonus bets when you do that. Matter of fact, I'll put the QR code up in the top right-hand corner of the screen right now. But I do think, New Bear, 8.5 is a mighty juicy opportunity. Like, I think to be below that, it's got to start with some pretty significant injuries.
I mean, why they're doing that, because 9 means another non-losing season for Tomlin. I mean, we're talking about the streak. This is 100% related to talk about falling off a cliff. I mean, he's been.
I don't bet against streaks. I definitely don't bet against streaks when they've upgraded the secondary and the tight end room and the quarterback spot, and the offensive line is arrow pointing up. Like, this is crazy, dude.
But Vegas is going to do Vegas, and they're playing the algorithm against the gut, the human emotion, and really the math, because the data points just show these guys figure out how to win games. I was asking myself when you brought this up originally what the number would be where I would even have pause. Like, how high would the number have to be before you were like, man, I don't know, I have to think about laying down a.
Yeah. I think 9.5, 10.5.
10.5 was the number for me.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing Steelers Wire ask Grok. I think Grok had them at 11-6, and that was with them losing to New England in week 3, which means that there's 12 out there. And that's if they lose to all the teams, Lions, Bills, Ravens, etc., that, you might look at on paper and say could still be judged as being superior 53-man rosters, right? And will be favored in the games when they play. But if Grok is spitting out 11-6, 10.5 was where I was at before I would even have pause. I mean, there's as many as 12 or 13 wins on the schedule for this team.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one if you ask me. And here's the story right here. Grok has it at 11-6. I mean, Grok doesn't have all the answers, obviously, and AI can miss context. And I would encourage anybody doing AI related stuff to double check your sources on a lot of different things. But dude, I think they probably aggregate data and give you a most probable result much better than anybody else. And that's an awful big spread to have it be 2.5 win difference.
Well, speaking of probability,
I'm all over that one.
Speaking of probability, how probable did the NFL, when Roger Goodell was willing to do the spot with the script writers to introduce the season previously and kind of, talk about wink stuff, like really getting in on the joke, like WWE style, how probable did the NFL think Rodgers coming to Pittsburgh was, knowing that they're going and they're going to have this showdown with the Jets, and it's going to be Justin Fields versus Aaron Rodgers out the gate?
Wow, there's a mismatch. Can we just stop pretending like Justin Fields is a good prospect? What are the Jets doing? You fail with 2 different teams, bro. You're basically a running back with a good arm, aren't you?
Well, I think here, one of the challenges last year was you would see those flashes that Chicago got. And what you get with the flashes and what you get with all that athletic talent is behind challenge offensive lines, he kind of thinks, he can make that hero ball play and he's going to hang in there. He's a tough kid and he takes a lot of sacks and then maybe runs himself into trouble. You talk about pocket awareness and some of those things that, I'm not going to rehash anything that anyone's already dinged him for. But when you just watch the kid play and you look at how he's built and how he runs away from guys on Sunday. I mean, he's a special athlete. He has
It's incredible.
Legitimate arm talent as well. You know, the question is going to be when you reunite him with Garrett Wilson. I mean, speaking of bets, Garrett Wilson, speaking of probability, Garrett Wilson might get 200 targets this year. If you're drafting fantasy or taking over-unders, you know, that's going to be he's going to probably be able to just win weeks for you by himself in your fantasy leagues. The question with New York is, you know, you have one guy out wide at Garrett Wilson. You have Breece Hall. Who's keeping Justin Fields upright? And then at the same time, it's the same question we have here in Pittsburgh about wide receiver too, right? And it's the same question about who are some of those other guys who are going to step up around him. So you can't do what happens to CeeDee Lamb in Dallas or any great wide receiver one who doesn't have a ton of help, where you're getting clog and cover, go back to guys, you know, Dez Bryant, Randy Moss, et cetera, where they're putting 2 corners on him at the jump.
Yeah. And, you know, I guess you get in desperation mode. You're like, hey, let's try this guy. I think Justin Fields can win you a game, but Trey Lance could win you some games. You know, like the barrier for playing well enough if you don't turn it over. I think Justin Fields is capable of doing those kind of things, but, you know, I'd be pretty disappointed. I just consider him a placeholder quarterback because, you know, you mention all the tools, and, you know, some of that can apply to Will Howard as well. The most important tool for quarterbacking is decision-making, you know,
100%.
And, you know, so far, maybe it's been unfair to Fields because he's put in situations where he doesn't have the best time and space and weapons, but I just expect that to continue. So, you know, I guess if I'm evaluating him, if I'm his agent, I need to get Fields on the Eagles, or I need to get Fields on a team that has a very physical run game that he can participate in, and the passing and the decision making is going to be against man, and it's going to be on a line that's going to give him that time and space.
The one thing you do have to respect is, you know, he came here last year and the plan was for him to basically redshirt behind Russ, and then Russ got hurt in training camp pushing a sled like a lineman, and there was a whole hullabaloo about that. What's that?
He's so extra.
Russ is the most extra. But what was supposed to happen was Fields was basically going to get to take a year off and learn how to be a professional quarterback, because the situation that he walked into in Chicago was the worst in the NFL. Salary cap, roster, all of it. And couldn't be more different for the situation that Caleb Williams walked into. He has no excuses. The exact opposite for Justin Fields. So he was supposed to get a reset last year. And what you have to respect and give him his flowers for is that he, after 6 games, when Russ did take over and he was healthy again, Steelers are 4-2. They should have been 5-1. They could have been 6-0. And it was really nice to see Justin Fields, with all those traits, come to a professional organization who does things a certain way and puts you in a position to be there at the end of every game. And he delivered at a 67% clip.
Hey, you know, I'd say job well done overall. And I just think that, you know, kind of further makes my point that the results, you know, are more based on how good the team is around you, you know, and that's exciting for the Steelers, because if you could win with him, then I think 2025 could be absolutely incredible. Up next year on the Noll Road, training camp this week, off-season report cards going around as a final answer. Man, this was a very active off-season. It was glorious. And we go to the Steel Curtain here. Loyal Ricks Jr. Posted the article. And, you know, a lot of great scores here. Metcalf and Rodgers get A's. Ramsey, B+. Jonnu Smith, A-. Darius Slay, a B. That might be generous, but I'll hope for the best. The departure of Minkah Fitzpatrick, B-. George Pickens, B. Najee Harris, B. I'd give that an A+, letting him go.
Yeah.
Omar Khan gets an A+, but overall they bring it here to a B+. I think that's a little low. I think this offseason deserves at least an A-. What do you think, New Bear?
Yeah, I mean, I think B+ is the only thing that's holding this back is you're talking about age in a couple of places with Rodgers and Slay. And then there's still a little bit of shuffling that is yet to take place. You know, Broderick Jones goes back to left tackle, and then the medical redshirt, Fatanu takes over at right. You know, you look at Minkah and Ramsey, it's not going to be a 1-for-1 switch, whether that's Juan Thornhill or whoever ends up playing free, or what they do with, their safety rotation, maybe even having as many as 3 safeties, with Jalen Ramsey actually shifting into a hybrid role where he can blitz off the slot and actually play deep. It's going to be really interesting to see more than anything, because they're going to be more versatile, less predictable, even when they're in 13 personnel. See, the Steelers were in 12 and 13 as much, if not more, than anyone last year, but they were in it because of the constraints that they had. Now, when they're in 12 and 13, because of the athleticism of a Freiermuth, because of the size and athleticism of a Darnell Washington, and because of the athleticism of Jonnu Smith, that's like having another receiver. That's like having a big receiver out there. Jonnu Smith's more like, Shannon Sharp's size tight end. He's more like a big wide receiver than an inline tight end. And they're talking about, 88 catches last year and doing things from the slot and being able to really move and hit plays over the top. Gesicki can really run and stretch the seam. Washington is so athletic that even at his size, where he blocks like Gronkowski, but they will split him out at the X and throw jump balls to him in the red zone. Lot to like about all these offseason moves.
Would you go as far as Mark Kaboli did, calling it the perfect offseason for the Steelers?
So it's perfect for me if Caleb Johnson is who we think he is. The reason I agreed so readily with you about Najee, it's not the Mr. Personality stuff, and it's not, some of the challenges that he had with the scheme and his fit in it versus him wanting to play like a much smaller back at times, and also just not having a clean, clear picture consistently with the changes and the movement and the inconsistency of the offensive line, maybe the lack of movement from the offensive line in some cases. What Caleb Johnson projects to is a guy who's going to get on the track, who's going to hit the track, and who's going to stay on the track. And if Caleb Johnson is able to elevate, and with those 250 to 275 carries, if he is in that Najee Harris role and he slots in and becomes a 4.5, 4.8, 5 yard a carry guy, this isn't just a perfect offseason, it's a Super Bowl offseason.
Yeah, Caleb Johnson has a ton of potential, and it's hard to say with any running back. Who knows what Ashton Genty's going to do and all the carries that he got at Boise State. I think Caleb Johnson has as good a shot as anybody of getting in there and winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, especially with how much they're going to want to give it to him. Okay, up next here on the Noll Road, buddy, we got ESPN rounding out their series here with the top 10 edge rushers for 2025. What stood out to you about this article?
What stood out to me with ESPN is the discrepancies between ESPN and PFF, and just some of the different back and forths where, look, at the end of the day, when you're talking about the top 4 quarterbacks or the top 4 edge rushers, everybody's going to have their favorite. I just don't think Myles Garrett is as good as TJ Watt. And when you look at the defensive player of the year that Garrett got, that was essentially a career achievement award, when TJ had damn near twice as many tackles, when he had a fumble return touchdown and interception and 19 sacks to 14. And you just look at it and go, how? And yeah, the Browns were 11-6 that year, and you're giving them their flowers, but you're not doing that over somebody who is a better player and who has better production. And I'm not going to look at this list until TJ Watt actually falls off the cliff that everyone's so worried about because he's 31 years old. My opinion is not going to change on that. What boggles my mind is when you look at the rest of the rankings and you see guys who should be on the list who are left off, or guys who aren't even an honorable mention. And this goes true for like quarter century team. And we were joking about the practice squad, and you're trying to say, what Steelers would belong on that team, or who are the all-time greats. It's year to year, and it's for all time. And what I love about what PFF did opposite ESPN is they went all the way to 32. They didn't just do a top 10 and honorable mention. And in that top 32, 3 Steelers, Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig are all in PFF's top 32. I believe the Dolphins are the only other team that has 3. And I started thinking, when you throw Jack Sawyer in there, and depending on, the edge conversation, whether you're looking at ends or OLBs and what really is an edge, based on how the scheme plays and how these guys are asked to attack offenses within it, you could argue that this Pittsburgh defensive front, the edge and the linebacker room, depending on how you look at it, is the deepest and the best in football.
Yeah, I mean, the first two levels of the defense are incredible, and the third's not bad either. So this is, I think what's going to likely drive a Super Bowl is the defense over the offense, right? This is going to be a defense first team, you think?
Well, it is. I mean, that's Mike Tomlin. We always joke here about counting his salary. His 20 million goes on top of whatever they're paying the defense. That's why it's a $200 million defense. And the negative, the haters, or however you want to color that, they talk about wanting to get into a rock fight. Well, part of that is the limitations that you've had at the end of Ben's career and in a post Ben era at quarterback. And when that's the case, it behooves you to get into some rock fights, because when you slow the game down and there's less possessions, and most NFL games come down to one possession, and you lead the league in takeaways, and TJ's out there peanut punching and Minka's out there taking the ball the other way for 6, you give yourself the best chance based on what you have. What's going to be really cool to see now is that when they do turn that tide and they get to midfield and they have a shot to take a shot, Aaron Rodgers is that guy.
He absolutely is, and with DK Metcalf running those deeps now, I think the only thing that would give me pause on the offense is who comes next, right? And maybe we should talk about how, this offense could get a pretty big infusion of talent here, as you have a couple of veteran wide receivers who are still on the market, perhaps looking for a contract that is not going to be there, perhaps waiting for an injury in the preseason or in training camp. But I mean, my mind goes to Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. And while I have hope that the Steelers' depth at wide receiver can rise to the challenge, I wouldn't mind seeing them going out there and maybe spending $5 to $8 million on one of these players if the market cooperates.
Well, if they can get one of those guys at that number, hats off. The market value, the AAV, the career earnings, they would have to be in a situation where, just like Aaron Rodgers, they don't need it, they want it. And they want to be here for an opportunity to win a ring. What I think would be, I mean, the best story, the best narrative, the coolest thing would be spending half of that money, or maybe 60% of what you said, and bringing Tyler Boyd home. You're talking about a kid who grew up in, 15 miles from the stadium as the crow flies. And I mean, I think he was 63-1 in high school and won the WPIAL all 4 years and scored 120 touchdowns, and then matriculates to Pitt. And all he does at a school with Larry Fitzgerald is leave as the all-time leading receiver in school history. You're talking about Larry Fitzgerald, Jordan Addison won a Biletnikoff. I mean, he is statistically the best guy to ever do it in a Pitt Panthers uniform. And he's got, I mean, Larry Fitz only played 2 years, and obviously Tyler Boyd played 3, but he's got him by 700 yards. It's not like he got him, like Hines Ward catching his 1,000th ball on a screen where he lost 2 at the end, But I don't know. He's 31, and there's been a lot of rumors for a lot of years about the money not being right, similar to how we're talking about Keenan and Coop. So maybe now is one of those things where the time's finally right and the situation presents itself. But before we talk any more about anybody who's not here, let's talk about who is here, and let's talk about Roman Wilson. Let's talk about J.J. McCarthy's wide receiver 1 for all time. I mean, he's got Jordan Addison and he's got Justin Jefferson now up in Minnesota, but there was a time where J.J. McCarthy was running around telling anybody who wanted to hear it that Roman Wilson was the best receiver in the country.
All right, up next here on the Noll Road, New Bear, you mentioned the Pro Football Network rankings. And it is off-season rankings times, and there's a couple of very interesting takeaways here. Number one, how much of a snub is it to put TJ Watt down at 27 for overall players? And how much out of left field is this? As great as it is, they put Cameron Hayward. Talk about, maybe this is a career achievement award. They have him at number 2 overall, which I think is awesome to see him recognized on that level.
What a great dude. I mean, you talk about anybody who wins Walter Payton Man of the Year. I mean, really anybody who gets nominated. If you're that awesome in the community that your team puts you forward to be one of the faces of the league for the work that you're doing and the lives that you're affecting. I mean, before we talk about anybody being any good at playing ball, hats off to the work they're doing off the field. When you think about Cam and the year that he had last year, coming off the year he had the year before, that was the thing that was the most cool, the most special perhaps about it. When you talk about our heroes and our heroes getting old and eventually, just kind of running out of rope and Father Time remaining undefeated. It was awesome to see Cam bounce back and just wreck games from the inside out.
Man, when I'm seeing anything Cam Hayward related, I'm just seeing, man, this guy exudes football. He exudes legacy, integrity. He's a throwback. He's a man's man. I mean, there is just, Cam Hayward is one of my absolute favorite human beings in all of sports. So salute to him.
Well,
okay.
And the best part about Cam being number 2 and getting his flowers is he was publicly talking about going to Mr. Rooney's office and making sure that TJ not only stayed here, but TJ got that deal done and got what he was worth. And so I think the thing that's great about wherever TJ Watt is ranked, the dudes in the building know who's the baddest defensive player on the planet.
Shoot, yeah, they do. Okay. You mentioned Jack Sawyer earlier. What do we make of Sports Illustrated? Here's Jacob Punturi, Steelers rookie linebacker, future star in waiting. I mean, if this happens, it would be amazing, right? I think, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to project a player that doesn't have measurables at this level into greatness. You know what I'm saying? So when I see Jack Sawyer, I wonder, was this a super try-hard guy that because of his, size, strength, was able to be a plus player in college? Like, how much more of a jump is it to the NFL? And if you had to be a try-hard guy to stand out in college, are you going to have to be a try-hard guy to be in the rotation in the NFL? That would be my realistic, objective approach on Sawyer. Like, when I see a headline like that, I'm like, whoa, let's slow down. How about Steelers rookie linebacker is a future rotation player? Would be, I think, mission accomplished for a guy of Jack Sawyer's profile.
Well, what I will say is that when you talk about dudes who are 6'4" and 260 pounds and run 4.53 according to Yahoo Sports with a 4.26 20-second shuttle or 20-yard shuttle, I think there's a little bit that he's maybe not getting credit for as an athlete. He's not just a try-hard guy. I mean, TJ Watt had a bet with JJ Watt that he could break 4.7 at the combine. I mean, TJ Watt did not test like a super freak. I mean, I would rather have guys that are just a tiny little bit off that than Mike Mamula. I don't need underwear Olympics champions who don't just love football. The thing about Jack Sawyer is that he, just like he was an Ohio State guy and he was exactly the type of guy they want, he's a Pittsburgh Steeler. And he's one of those dudes who gets to come in and Cam Hayward and others, Nate Herbig being able to come in, not just because his brother's an offensive lineman across the locker room, but just like with Derek Watt being here and all the jokes about J.J. Watt and bringing all 3 of the Watt brothers, or Cam Hayward's little brother here, that whole family business thing has traits too. And you're talking about guys who are going to show up every day, compete their ass off, do whatever they are asked in the name of winning. And I do think Jack Sawyer has a little bit more juice as an athlete than he maybe gets credit for. But I also think him coming in and not having any expectations except for learning from one of the best to ever do it, just like Nate Herbig did before him, just like Cam Hayward did before him, just like the truly great Steelers teams of yore did. That was how they did business. Remember, Ben Roethlisberger wasn't supposed to start as a rookie till Tommy Maddox got hurt. Even the guys they draft high as pedigree guys, as traits and measurable guys, they want them to come in and learn the way they do things. And Jack Sawyer 3 years from now will undoubtedly be a better player because now he'll get to come in and play with his hair on fire for the 12 to 25 snaps or whatever his role is on this team. And then at the same time, every day, he's going head-to-head or learning from TJ Watt as they go head-to-head with 2 first-round tackles on either side that they ask him to work from.
And I hear you. I love it. I think Jack Sawyer is going to be really good at setting the edge, at being that, defensive end in your rotation, that when the other team is crushing you on the ground, you can insert him in there, I think, and be better. But to rush the passer, you need something other than strength. You need a little bit more flexibility, the dip in the hip. I think he's tight and stiff. And certainly there's been NFL players that have gotten the job done with that profile in the past. But, I'd be looking at, are we going to move him? Are we going to move him? Like, or is he going to be out there? And you're
gonna get him in the protein shake line and kick him inside,
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that we're clear on one thing. The slowest reported time on Jack Sawyer is 4.65. It's not like he's out there hanging up a 4.9. This isn't a Manti Te'o situation where everyone expected him to run, sub 4.6 and he throws up a 4.88, 4.82, and everyone's like, whoa. I mean, maybe
you saw him make the house call on the swipe in college in the semifinal. He can run. In a straight line, he can really, really run. I think the flexibility to get around that edge is more what I'm talking about. How much torque can you produce with your hips and your shoulders in order to move this way and still be fast enough to get around it? I don't even know. Like, if he was playing golf, I think he's a quarter turn guy.
He might. That's a great point. It might start with getting out of those 1980 Tecmo Bowl shoulder pads. I think there'll be something to that. But, all kidding and uniform, jokes aside, I think they unveil the new throwbacks tomorrow, right? That's coming.
Yes, they do. Yes. Which one are you rooting for?
Anything but the Bumblebee. Literally, whatever they do, I don't care what it is, as long as it's not the Bumblebees. But all kidding aside, the Jack Sawyer thing, TJ Watt, when he came into the league, is a different dude than he is today, in as much as his workouts have completely changed. And he's had to focus not just on, getting older and pliability and all the things that you want to do as the science changes around it to talk about prolonging your career, extending your peak, but also based on what they're asking him to do. You train a little bit differently if you're going to be dropping more, or you train a little bit differently if they're like, hey, you're literally 100 out of 100 lining up and getting in a sprinter stance and going and hunting quarterbacks. You're not dropping at all, right? Like they're going to have a plan for Jack Sawyer, and they're going to say, this is what you're going to do this year. This is your role. This is what you need to be prepared to do. That plan is going to change. The plan is that in 3 or 4 years, if TJ Watt is out of tread on the tire, that he has done everything he can be to put himself in a position to be the successor, to have earned the right to succeed TJ Watt, but also to potentially Alex Highsmith on the other side. Let's not forget that the contract stuff is gonna come up, that as guys continue to produce in the system, other teams are going to come in and want your guys. And if they come and they pluck a Highsmith or they pluck a Herbig, Sawyer is right there as a rotational piece day one, who has all of the character traits, all of the leadership and off-field stuff that you want in a Pittsburgh Steeler, with more than enough of the developable physical stuff that as the plan evolves for him over time, they believe he can slot into it.
I love that. I love a lot of these potential throwbacks. Oh my God,
there's so many great ones.
The biggest engagement farming move would be the Eagles' Kelly Green, right here. Well, I think anything they do just looks amazing. Like even the OG there with this little dude in the middle kind of looks like an owl. I love that. I love bottom left here. This look like it's all good no matter where you go to me.
Yeah, the crooked font thing, there's a lot of folks who just love when they do a throwback and all the throwback is the big block numbers. And the Steelers colors, I mean, you're talking about not just because of the tradition of winning and all the things and the great players that come and run and go through that, but when you see the black and gold against like so many of their opponents, like when you see them and it's the Packers or the Niners or the Cowboys, just keep naming other teams. The clash of colors on Sundays in the fall, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, back in the day, it was the Oakland Raiders, right? It was the silver and the black and gold. And even though they shared one of the main colors, like that cacophony of color has just been so much fun for as long as they've been around. Sometimes these teams do really, 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 really weird stuff or oversimplified in a way where it looks like they made it on Minecraft and like some kid won his wish that day to make the uniforms. And I'm just like, man, with the Steelers, they're so classic that they don't have to do that much for people to go crazy for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible too. Like you see some of the metrics on these team websites what gets the most clicks of any stories they do. And a lot of them are about color combinations, jerseys, and helmet changes potentially. Like, fans just eat this kind of stuff up and they love repping the gear. Final story here on the Noll Road. Former Steelers Pro Bowler shares insight on Mike Tomlin's future. This is Ryan Clark. He says Tomlin has enough equity to stay with the Steelers long-term, despite previously saying maybe the team should move in a different direction. I think Clark got feedback on that take. Maybe he heard from people in the organization that are just saying, we're not moving on. And Clark's adjusting to sort of align his opinion, which he does often. And I know some people think he's wishy-washy or a fence sitter. But I guess I think that's wise to not stand on an opinion, even though it can make you look like a flip-flopper.
Well, I mean, two things can be true at the same time that seem diametrically opposed. You can talk about, look, I mean, Steve Spurrier won a Heisman Trophy as a player at Florida, coached players to Heisman trophies, won a national title, and at some point, the University of Florida got tired of Steve Spurrier. 10, 12, 15, 18 years, a long time. And the Steelers do it longer and more consistently than anybody in the history of this league. And when you look at Tomlin and you talk about the lifetime contract, or he'll be here as long as he wants to, it can be true that Ryan Clark said and talked through all the reasons he believed that it would be good for both sides, for them to get a fresh perspective and for Mike Tomlin to get to go somewhere that truly appreciated him. And I think Ryan Clark's comments were driven by actually him being hurt as a former player who just laid it all on the line and loves this guy. They have a tremendous relationship, and they won. And when you win Super Bowls, I mean, that's the highest level of competition, and that's the biggest thing you can do. And they did it together through injuries, through setbacks, through heartbreak, through all this stuff that you go together on the journey to the mountaintop, right? And I have to believe that Ryan Clark's taking a step back, almost in a weird, almost juxtaposed way, kind of sticking up for Tomlin, saying, y'all don't appreciate this man enough. I mean, all he does is find a way to win with whatever ingredients, right, are in the kitchen. He finds a way to make an awesome recipe out of it. Now, you can also say that some of that was his own doing. You can also say that he has a lot to do with the shopping list. And then, oh, by the way, when Omar Khan comes in and there's a new voice in the room from that perspective, and you start doing things differently with how you acquire players and shape a roster, maybe that message can turn back up to 11 from the man who's never had a losing season.
I love it, because I think continuity and consistency is so underrated in sports. And anytime you change over to a new coaching staff, it just throws all these different X factors. And Mike Tomlin has what it takes to go win a Super Bowl. And I do strongly believe that Arthur Smith is one of the top offensive minds out there. And last year he was kind of handcuffed. And, now that they have Aaron Rodgers, I do think a lot of things are in place, my man. All right, terrific stuff. New Bear training camp this week. Stay tuned to the Noll Road for a coverage of all the training camps, practices, storylines from the day. And, of course, if anything breaks, we'll be in there with that. You can read all of our stuff, get our socials online at thenollroad.com. For New Bear, I'm Gavin Dawson, and we'll see you next time on the Noll Road.